coming out of Valcluta, and as long as I'm not using the phone, I should be okay, which I'm not using the phone, I'm just filming on the phone. So I thought I'd stick my neck out, despite the worst efforts of the algorithm to ignore my presence, and go live. The advice on AI was to curtail my go live activities for at least 72 hours because posting every day just wasn't working. And the reason it wasn't working is I think that the algorithm sees daily posts as slop. And so it refuses to put your live stream out in front of an audience. In fact, it may even be the case that this live stream doesn't go out in front of anybody. Now, it may go out live as I speak, although the indications are that there isn't anybody out there to watch, or it may go streamed later, in which case somebody may watch it. We shall see. I'm also testing out the microphone, so I'm hoping that you can hear me, because if you can't, then this is just going to be me making noises. But either way, I see it as a win-win because I get to have my way live stream. The algorithm gets to have its way and ignore me, and you, the vital component in this process, anybody who's out there, gets to have an opportunity to hear my opinions. So that's got to be good for you. So what are my opinions? Well, my opinions include nice guy syndrome and the scripts that people run, nice guy scripts that people run, and how to subvert that process and to detect those sub-patterns that we run in our minds neurologically and work out ways to at first recognize them, and then having recognized them, work out ways to overcome them. My personal journey in this topic has been interesting because I started out by looking at nice guy syndrome from the classic Dr. Robert Glover process, where he talks about guys who are disappointed in love and romance, and they don't understand why. And they don't understand why the more nice they act, the more repulsive they become. And then I've widened my net because I actually think that the nice guy syndrome and the nice guy scripts that are run by people isn't limited to romance. In fact, I would suggest that the nice guy scripts leach and bleed into all other areas of life, including work and career, including family, other interpersonal relationships, and such like. That being said, I then further widened my net because I began to realize that nice guy syndrome isn't limited strictly to men, because there are plenty of women out there who are being nice and who are not getting the results from their life that they would like to get. So I thought that I would take my nice guy work and then I would give that another name. I'd call that Cinderella complex, and apply that to women, because men and women are very similar in a lot of ways. Obviously, we're very different in a lot of ways, but that's not a problem. Nor should it be, because I actually think it's a wonderful thing that men and women are different in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to raising youngsters, children, working out relationships, negotiating their lives. I think that men and women bring different skill sets to the situation, and long may it continue. I'm not saying that men are perfect, nor are women perfect. I would suggest that women tend to veer too much towards emotionalism, and men tend to veer too much towards protecting their egos. I also think that our communication styles are very different. I think that's an evolutionary thing. I think that women have evolved to be more verbal, and men have evolved to be less verbal, and so we have different ways of communicating. And sometimes when men and women communicate with each other, yeah, you may have a mismatch or a problem. And again, I don't think that's a problem though, because I think it makes life more interesting, to tell you the truth. Wouldn't it be boring? Imagine if you won some kind of weird ego lottery and everybody in the world was exactly the same as you or me. Imagine how boring that would be. It would be that guy who, the story I heard about the guy who thought he'd gone to heaven. He was a gambler and he played the slot machines and he played the casino and he won every time. Eventually, he started to complain. It started to become a job. It started to get boring, winning all the time. Eventually, it became tedious. It became a bit of a pain in the backside. And he went to the cashier. He said, "Look, I thought this was heaven. I thought that heaven was supposed to be better than this. I come to the crap tables every day and I win every day. I play the slot machines every day. I win every day. I never lose. And frankly, I'm over it. Are you telling me I've got to be here forever doing this?" And the cashier looked at him and said, "Who said this was heaven?" So one definition of hell can be getting what you want all the time. Think about those rock stars who had an endless supply of women, groupies. A guy who isn't a rock star might think that's an enviable situation to be in. But a guy who is a rock star might find it, frankly, a bit old and boring. In fact, he might find himself deteriorating and degrading on a soul level. So the fact that women and men are different and we bring different strengths and characteristics to our conversations, personally, I think is a good thing. Because otherwise, if we were all the same, or you could have women made to order, or other people made to order, it would be boring. In fact, you might be saying, just shoot me. It raises the question of the robot sex doll, doesn't it? Do you think about the robot sex doll? Always compliant, always available, always willing, for want of a better word. You know, some people might pay good money for something like that, but eventually it'll just end up in the cupboard along with the gym workout gear that they bought online. Because getting what you want all the time, frankly, is uninteresting and boring. However, my aim is to assist people who, far from getting what they want all the time, end up getting very little or getting less or nothing of what they want. And they don't understand why. And one of the reasons why the nice guys and the Cinderellas feel that they're getting nothing is because they, like the sex robots and like the eternal nice guys, are too compliant, and they're giving away too much of their own cognitive load, etc. for free. And nobody respects it. Nobody wants to buy the milk when they're getting the cow for free. So my work is dedicated to assisting people who wish to stop running those damaging sub-patterns and start living a life better. How can you do it? Well, you can do a 5-day challenge with me, or a 5-session challenge with me. I think maybe 5 days is too long. I know that 5 days with me might be too long. You can consider doing a quick pre-flight checklist in which I ask you 3 probing questions, and I ask you to send me a paragraph answer to each of those questions, and then if we can see eye to eye and the answers seem good to me, I can offer you a chance to go on a 5-session challenge. Eventually, you could go up through the ranks and you could do a 30-day challenge. At the outset, the pre-flight checklist and the 5-day challenge, thank you for the thumbs up, and the 5-day challenge are gratis, community offerings, free to the user, etc. Why? Why am I giving you stuff for free? Well, it's all part of my sneaky plan to make friends with you so that I can charge you. Also, it's part of my sneaky plan because let's say I achieve relationships with 100 people. Chances are only 3 of you are going to want to go down or go to the 30-day plan. But in the process, those 3 are going to have, you're going to have weeded yourself out almost. You would have self-selected. So this is a very efficient way. Putting out a live like this and then offering an option for a 5-session challenge, which might graduate to a 30-day challenge. Yeah, this is a very efficient way of doing it. A lot of people will view this live stream casually. Most people won't want to do it, and I'm cool with that. I hear impossible statistics, to tell you the truth. Things like, before somebody buys, they have to encounter you 11 times, and then they decide whether they want to buy with you. Well, it's just crazy talk. The rate at which I'm getting my material out to people is, most days I'm lucky to reach 11 people, let alone reach 11 people 11 times. So I feel like a lone voice in a desert, in a YouTube desert. I'm hoping that YouTube will, at some stage, offer me some kind of gratification and put my word out to more people. But I'm not holding my breath. The other thing is, though, Rome wasn't built in a day. And so, in order to put out my offer of a 5-session challenge to people, I've got to be prepared to contact and reach out and post as often as is feasible. If you'd come in at the beginning of this live session, you would have heard me say that if I post every day live, the algorithm will not put me out there because it sees my offerings as slop. So I've waited a little while before I put out, and I've given it 2 or 3 days. I think the recommendation was 72 hours. But I'm only going to post live once a week going forward. This is a great opportunity to post live, just driving back from my workshop today. So I did a workshop today. I had 10 people in the workshop. We did some team building, some work about communication skills, some work about confidence and assertiveness. And yeah, it was good. It was a good session. I always feel a slight sense of relief when I do a workshop session if I leave not having been tarred and feathered, so you know, my bar isn't very high. Truth of the matter is, I've been doing this long enough to be able to operate within environments and adapt to people's needs, and I do get a certain amount of gratification from that, for want of a better word. But what I'd really like to do is I'd really like to be able to set up a retreat and set up a 1-day workshop for people to do a 5-segment challenge, whereby at the end of the day they come away with a very strong awareness of their neurological conditions, a very strong awareness of ways that they can adapt their behavior, and a strong awareness of how they can fix their nice guy subroutines. You see, we all run an internal narrative, and when I say narrative, that's a fancy way of saying story or dialogue. We all have an internal voice which discusses our worlds with us in a certain way. And some of us, unfortunately, actually, the majority of us, unfortunately, have an internal narrative which tends to snipe, undermine, and cut us down, cut us off at the knees kind of thing. And how we got there is the eternal question, but I would suggest it's through society, upbringing, parenting, all of that stuff. Also through media, ideologies that are thrown at us, political parties, politicians, you name it. Anybody who's got some skin in the game is going to impress upon you their view of the world and how it should be lived, how your life should be lived. Unfortunately for men, this has become a real problem because at least since the late 60s, men have been encouraged to subjugate themselves or to surrender their masculinity in favor of a more feminized society. I don't blame feminized society. I don't blame feminists or women for this. I'm simply pointing out that we are living in a paradigm in which schooling has become increasingly feminized, diversity, equity, and inclusion has meant that certain identity groups have been marginalized increasingly. At the expense, in fact, how can I put it? Other groups have been allowed to rise and have had favorable outcomes, whereas some groups have been asked to take a back seat. I would suggest that white males have been asked to take a back seat. In fact, ever since those white males, or that generation of white males who are now middle-aged and beyond, they were asked to take a back seat since the mid to late 70s, I would suggest. And that's the paradigm. And if I were somebody who was able to capitalize or exploit this paradigm, I would. And that's what's happened. However, many men, in my humble opinion, have found themselves caught up in a bit of a vortex where if they do put their heads above the parapet, they get shot at, they get accused of being misogynistic or phobic of something, or, in the 70s it started out as all men are rapists, So since the 70s we've been spoon-fed this diatribe about how men are surplus to requirements and we should really step aside and let women take over, which is fine, But my concern is the impact that this paradigm might have on ordinary, everyday guys. What about a boy child who is raised into this environment? Is this boy child expected to adopt the identity of somebody who is a potential rapist, or someone who has got, privilege? I grew up in a working class environment. I'm a white working class young man, well, not so young anymore, but statistics have indicated that at least since the mid-70s, educational initiatives have been loaded in favor of other ethnic groups or genders, and the single demographic that has suffered at the hands of the educational system most has been white working class males. Does this mean I'm crying out for special attention? Not particularly, but it does mean that I have developed an awareness that there might be quite a large section of society that have taken a bit of a pounding over the years. And when they have raised objections to this, they have been shut down by having to bear the brunt of all sorts of accusations. Am I correct in this? If you think I'm correct, give me a thumbs up. If you think I'm not correct, give me a thumbs down. Let's see what the story is. If you want to pass judgment on me and point out the inadequacies of my argument, please do. Because I think you'll find the difference between myself and some others is that I welcome the dialogue and I welcome discussion, whereas some others might want to shut down the dialogue and the discussion, which to me simply suggests that they don't have a good argument to make. And so, to my wider scale project. My wider scale project is to provide antidotes, vaccinations, well, we don't like that word, but antidotes perhaps to some of the problems that men have faced when it comes to expressing themselves. Because just like a Newton's cradle, one ball hits another and it has a knock-on effect. So if you are encouraged to think of yourself as a potential rapist, according to the feminist tract, then when it comes to chercher la femme, or seeking to establish relationships with a woman, it may be that you feel cowed, for want of a better word, into submission for fear of being accused of something heinous. So the impact there, so the next ball on the cradle there is, on Newton's cradle, is the next clack, is a reduced sense of confidence. And not only is there a reduced sense of confidence in the dating market and the romance market, one has a reduced sense of confidence about one's gender in general. Especially if one works in a career or a working environment which is dominated by females. And let's face it, many of them are. So now, the original idea that you should be guilty or somehow consider yourself to be privileged and have to redress as a male in the sexual marketplace, that sense is now compounded by how one is supposed to address that imbalance in the job marketplace. Notwithstanding, often your boss is a woman. And then, if you extend that, the next ball on the Newton's cradle, number 3, is ideology. Because now you're coming up against an ideological presupposition. You, as a man, should be kowtowing to an ideology which infers that you are a victimizer or a predator. And the only ways around that is to act as much as possible not like a victim or a victimizer or a predator. Surrender your masculinity, or to pretend to do so. And I believe that many of those guys out there who are doing that are pretending. But they're also at war with themselves because they're at war with their own natural impulses. It's like when I was at college, I went through a phase of vegetarianism because I fancied a girl who was a vegetarian. If I was in my early 20s now, I'd pretend to be transphilia. I'd pretend to be down with the clique because secretly, deep down, I dress differently, I'd act differently, because basically I just want to get laid. Anyway, that aside, the next plaque on the Newton's cradle is the constant awareness that if you do revert, for want of a better phrase, to traditional masculine traits, then you're going to find yourself isolated and ostracized. So think about the compounding impact or effect of all of these messages, especially that they have on young men. Take the Ferrari, for example, over Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate was widely vilified because he was apparently having a toxic effect on young men. A counter-argument may be that he was proposing a different way of looking at things which are counter to the current orthodoxy about how men are supposed to be. And the way that narrative was framed was to, instead of saying, oh, well, you're running counter to the way that we think things should be, you just go straight to, oh no, you're toxic. Which is a shame, really, because it seems to me that that's just an attempt to shut down debate. And as I've said earlier, anybody who wants to shut down debate is not okay in my book. Anybody who wants to have debate is okay, in my view. But anybody who wants to shut down a debate, well, that's another story, because it impairs that they don't have an argument. And often, the first straw in the wind of anybody who doesn't have an argument is what is known as the ad hominem attack. So the ad hominem is where you attack the person's character rather than the quality of their arguments, in the belief that by attacking a person's character, it renders their arguments null and void. That's what's happening with Tommy Robinson, isn't it? So Tommy Robinson isn't engaged with, in terms of argument or debate, or he has been, though, he's been to the Oxford Union and all sorts of places, but rather than engage in an argument or a debate with a man, what they do is they attack him. And this is all too common. So people who are called white separatists, far right, Nazis, all that kind of stuff, these are all ad hominem attacks, which indicate that the issuer of the attack doesn't have enough material at their disposal to make a proper argument. Was it Graham Linehan, the guy who wrote Father Ted? Again, ad hominem attacks, even threats of arrest. J.K. Rowling. My daughter says that J.K. Rowling is a bigot, a racist, on the basis that there aren't enough brown-skinned people represented in her books, and on the basis of the loads of different examples, none of which she can cite. So J.K. Rowling's views have now been these are in the UK, aren't they? You can measure average speed and then send somebody a speeding fine if they get to the next spot faster than they should. Brilliance in its simplicity. It means that Big Brother is watching, I guess. Although I think George Orwell was wrong in one respect when he wrote 1984. If he'd been really good at his job, he would have called her Big Sister. Oh, it's cheap, isn't it? Anti-mischief maker. True though, isn't it? The fact of the matter is, no, actually not the fact of the matter is, it could be argued for that, because I didn't study it. It could be argued that there is a gynocratic awareness of ideology which oversees much of how power is distributed in our societies. By that I mean chicks are ruling things, which is kind of weird because if the sum total feminist advance since 1740 is that female views and feminist views and women have somehow managed to get to the top of the pile and are now running things, I think the evidence suggests not, because if that were the case, wouldn't it be crazy to consider that many of the people with a certain ideology are basically kissing ass when it comes to Muslim religion, which is blatantly misogynistic, and certain people of a political persuasion are kissing ass of transgender personalities, which means that they would deny women safe spaces to get changed or engage in sports. It sounds like the last, what? If we go from the suffragette movement from the 1890s through to now, what is it, 2026, the last 135 years of advances for women are now suffering from some desperate rearguard action where women's rights to places of safety and women's rights to bodily autonomy are now under threat. And the people who are promoting this notion most strongly tend to be women. It's weird. What went wrong? Well, of course, we're back to J.K. Rowling now, because she's not down with that, so of course she must be, was she a TERF or something? I can't remember what the acronym is, what the ad hominem attack would be to describe J.K. Rowling. But anyway, I digress. I think we're in a very interesting place in time. And my work, which is dedicated to assisting men to rejoin their own autonomy and their own power in the face of so much pressure to conform to some kind of weird paradigmatic notion. I guess I could be considered a symptom of this rather than a solution to it. And I'm willing to take that bullet if the creation of a YouTube channel which is dedicated to assisting men to overcome their nice guy syndrome is a symptom of some kind of conservative backlash, so be it. I don't think it is, because I don't think conservative, liberal, left and right, I don't think these terms actually mean much anymore. Talk about people who are liberal / progressive as if they're in the same breath. We talk about people who are conservative / antiquated or backward thinking as if they're in the same breath, but I don't think that these political terms really stand for much anymore. I think we've moved past left and right. I think we're moving into a new paradigm politically, in which the differentiating factor will be critical or non-critical. When I say critical, I mean in terms of being able to think critically. I like to think that I am thinking critically when I make my statements. But the only way to test whether I'm thinking critically is to be open to people arguing with me. And if I say to you, think like I think without arguing, and if you want to argue with me, I'm going to shut you down, call you names, that's the opposite of thinking critically. I think that that's the next political and ideological paradigm that we are entering into. The idea that people can think critically about any subject without being shot down by anybody for thinking that or expressing it. I think that's where we're going into the next paradigm. And I'd like to be part of that. I'd like to be part of a paradigm in which people are encouraged to express their opinions, but also encouraged to accept if their opinions are found wanting. So instead of working through a lens of, well, if you say certain things, then you're not entitled to have that opinion, we work through a lens of, if you want to express your ideas, you've got to be open to argument rather than being shut down. Well, I prefer that one. We're going over a bridge into the little rugby sounds. 31 of these, you know. I've counted these many times. So where to now? I think the next place to go is to ask some probing questions. First of all, give me a thumbs up if you agree with this statement. All men are potential rapists. Oh, I guess there's nobody there. Either that or nobody agrees with it, which is good. Give me a thumbs up if you believe with it, if you agree with this feminist statement from the 70s. Women need men like a fish needs a bike. That was actually written, that was like graffiti at one stage. So we have all men are potential rapists and women need men like a fish needs a bike. How about the notion that if you are white and male, then you have privilege, and before you say anything, or if you say anything, you should check your privilege. If you agree with that statement, please give me a thumbs up. How about the idea that certain groups in society who have been disadvantaged should be allowed positive discrimination in order to redress the balance? Who's down with that idea? Because if that were the case, I'd like to put in my pitch for white working class males. Because we've taken quite a pounding over the years. I don't mind telling you. There's so much as well. When you go on to like YouTube or Shorts, you watch Shorts and throughout the different social media, you can, if you want, you can consume a 24-hour menu of entitled women saying inane things about men. But you've got to bear in mind that those people are a very, very small section of society, and they've been cherry-picked and put into Shorts and create the illusion that all women think like that. In the same way, they cherry-pick men who think in certain ways and put them before us in order to create the illusion that all men think like that. Well, it's simply not true, is it? If you go out into the average street and the average city and the average country in the West, or indeed anywhere, and you ask men what they think about their role as men, the majority of them will turn out to be reasonably, well, quite reasonable people. And the same with women. They will turn out to be quite reasonable people. But the problem I face, or the problem I have detected, is that because of the kind of mass media messages that we consume a lot, many people have been encouraged to take a back seat in their own lives. They become, what is it, NPCs? A lot of people have been encouraged, men especially actually, and some women, they've been encouraged to become non-playing characters in their lives, not to stick up for themselves. Is it because they've been bullied into submission? Maybe. Is it because the current paradigm tells them they're somehow inadequate or they should shut up, STFU? Maybe. Is it because we've been raised in increasingly feminized societies which have tended to overlook the masculine, predisposition? Maybe. Whatever it is, I think, and I hope this is true because I'm aiming my work at it, my thesis is that there is a large number of men and there is a large number of women out there who are feeling underserved, who feel underprivileged, and who are disadvantaged by the way the world is framing things. And if I can do anything to try and redress or address that imbalance, setting up a YouTube channel, creating coaching resources, creating a 5-session challenge, offering a pre-flight checklist, all of these things is just a small glimpse of light in an otherwise dark environment. And I will post live once a week, like I'm posting now on the Pattern Interrupter channel, because it's a great way to stay awake while I'm driving. But it's also a great way for me to be able to free form and riff and just tell you a few things about where I'm coming from. And it's been great to see that people have been partaking and watching and consuming my material. When I post it daily, there's a daily drop. After about 3-4 weeks, YouTube stops distributing my material, so I got a flat line. Because I think, and maybe they were accurate in this, they felt that I was just using YouTube as an advertising medium. Well, I am to some extent, but I'm also sharing. I'm using the medium of YouTube to share ideas. And I'm also, I hasten to add, encouraging debate and free form discussion about certain topics. So I'm not here to spew bile or to vomit words or to engage in ad hominem attacks. I'm here to ask probing and thought-provoking questions. And if you like probing and thought-provoking questions, then I wholeheartedly welcome you to the Pattern Interrupter channel, and I look forward to being able to distribute more information to you this time next week on a Tuesday, mid-afternoon New Zealand time, so that if you want to tune in, listen to me ramble, the ramblings of an old man, if you want to do that, I wholeheartedly encourage you to come and check out my channel, The Pattern Interrupter, and come and see me, Lee Clark, on there. Here's my hand. Yes, I am a legend, and I welcome your participation. I'm going to pull over now so that I can do stuff to the phone without jeopardizing your safety or mine. And because I can't stand silence, I will narrate the process. Indicated, pull it over, Rolling over, check the rear view. It's okay. Yep, got away with that. Right, so fond farewells. 45 minutes of live. Pattern interrupter drop. And I look forward to any comments, any participation, any subscriptions, any thumbs up, anything like that. Come on, baby. Let's spread the love. And I hope you could hear me because I had got a microphone plugged in, and it would be tragic if I just spent the last 46 minutes on mute, wouldn't it? So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. Catch you next time. Goodbye.